Right now, somewhere in your kitchen, a quiet machine is fighting a war. Every second, it holds back an invisible army, an army that wants to turn your food into poison. You call it a refrigerator, and you almost never think about it. But here is the strange part. Humans survived for nearly 300,000 years without one. No electricity, no freezer, no ice machine. And somehow, they didn't starve. So how did they do it? How did people keep meat from rotting, milk from spoiling, and fish from killing them? In the middle of summer, in the middle of the desert, thousands of years before anyone even knew what a bacterium was? The answer is one of the most quietly brilliant stories in all of human history. And it begins with a question our ancestors couldn't answer for almost our entire existence. Why does food rot at all? Here's a secret nobody knew for most of human history. Your food is not being destroyed by time. It's being eaten by things too small to see. The moment an animal dies or a fruit is picked, invisible microbes, bacteria, molds, and yeasts begin to feast. Tiny enzymes inside the food break its own cells apart. Oxygen in the air turns fats rancid. And in warmth, the microbes don't just grow, they explode. A single bacterium can become billions in a matter of hours. Ancient humans had no idea any of this existed. Nobody would even see a microbe until the 1600s. But through thousands of years of trial, error, and a lot of dangerous meals, they learned the 3 rules of rot. Food spoils fastest when it's warm, when it's wet, and when it's exposed to air. Remember those 3. Heat, water, air. Because every single method you're about to see is humans finding a way to steal one of them away from the enemy. The earliest hunter-gatherers didn't invent cold. They borrowed it. They sank meat into ice-cold streams. They packed it into snowbanks. They pushed food deep into caves, where, mysteriously, the air stayed cool even at the height of summer. In the frozen north, they buried their kills directly in the permafrost, a natural freezer waiting in the ground. But nature's cold had a problem. It wasn't everywhere, and it wasn't reliable. You can't carry a cave with you. So humans discovered something they could do anywhere on Earth. If you can't make food cold, make it impossible to live on. And the simplest way to do that was to attack rule number 2, take away the water. Microbes are like us in one way. They can't live without water. So take the water away, and they simply can't grow. Lay strips of meat, fish, or fruit out under the sun and wind, and slowly the moisture evaporates, leaving food a hostile desert where nothing can feed. This is the oldest preservation trick we know. Tens of thousands of years old. It's jerky, it's dried fish, it's raisins and dates, and it works so well that it's still how we store grain, beans, and pasta in your pantry right now. But drying under a cloudy or humid sky was slow. And then, almost certainly by accident, someone noticed that meat left near a fire didn't just dry faster. It lasted longer too. Hang meat or fish over a low, smoldering fire, and something remarkable happens. The heat dries it out, but the smoke does something extra. It coats the food in natural preservative chemicals that kill microbes and drive away insects. It's a double defense. Dried on the outside, chemically shielded all over. That smoky ham, that smoked salmon, that strip of bacon. We crave those flavors today as a treat. But they didn't start as flavor. They started as one of humanity's first survival technologies. Then came a mineral so powerful it changed the course of civilization. Salt. Salt is almost magical. Pack it around food, and it pulls the water out, not only out of the meat, but out of any microbe unlucky enough to land on it. Through a process called osmosis, salt literally dries bacteria to death. A well-salted piece of meat or fish can survive for months, even years, with no cold at all. Salt became so precious it was traded like currency. Roman soldiers were partly paid in it, and that payment is the root of the word we still use today: salary. Salted cod and salted pork fed armies, navies, and the great ocean voyages of exploration. Without salt, the ships that mapped the world could never have left the harbor. The next idea is the cleverest of all, because instead of killing every microbe, it recruits some of them. In fermentation, you invite the good microbes to the feast first. They devour the sugars and pump out acid and alcohol, turning the food into an environment so sour and hostile that the dangerous microbes can't survive. It's decay, but decay you control. Delicious decay. This is cheese, yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi, pickles, wine, and beer. It took milk, cabbage, and grapes, foods that spoil in days, and transform them into things that last for months. Our ancestors couldn't see the biology, but without ever knowing it, they had learned to farm invisible life. But drying, salting, and fermenting all change food, its taste, its texture. Sometimes you just want it fresh, so humans turn to the one source of cold available almost everywhere: the ground beneath their feet. Dig down just a few feet, and the soil holds a steady, cool temperature, around 10 to 13 degrees Celsius, all year round, no matter how brutal the heat above. Root cellars, storage pits, and cellars carved into hillsides kept vegetables, apples, and dairy fresh for months, and one humble material hid a secret of its own: wet clay. Take a clay pot, put it inside a slightly larger clay pot. Fill the gap between them with wet sand. As the water slowly seeps through the porous outer clay and evaporates into the dry air, it carries heat away with it, pulling the temperature inside down far enough to keep vegetables fresh for weeks in blistering heat. It's the very same reason you shiver stepping out of a swimming pool. Evaporation steals heat. This device, the zeer pot, is still saving harvests across Africa today. The ancient Egyptians used the same physics on a grander scale, leaving porous jars of water on rooftops overnight and having servants fan wet reed mats to chill the air and the water. But one civilization pushed evaporation to a limit that still sounds impossible. Around 400 BC, in the scorching Persian desert, engineers built enormous cones of mud brick, some able to hold 5,000 cubic meters inside. They sealed them with sarouj, a special waterproof mortar of sand, clay, lime, egg white, goat hair, and ash, with walls up to 2 meters thick. They called these structures yakhchāls, literally ice pits. And here's the part that sounds like magic. They didn't just store ice. In the middle of the desert, they made it. On cold winter nights, they channeled water from mountain streams through underground aqueducts called qanats into long, shallow pools tucked behind tall shade walls. Under the dry desert air and the clear night sky, the water radiated its heat straight up into space and froze solid, even on nights when the air never technically dropped below freezing. At dawn, workers cut the ice, carried it into the towering dome, and packed it in straw. The dome shape vented warm air out the top. Wind catchers funneled cool air in. The massive walls locked out the summer sun. The result: ice all summer long in one of the hottest places on Earth. 24 centuries ago, with no electricity, just a profound understanding of physics. and a lot of human genius. The Persians weren't alone. All around the ancient world, people were chasing cold. In Rome, wealthy citizens sent runners sprinting into the mountains to haul back snow, which they buried in straw-lined pits and sold in special snow shops. Emperors chilled their wine and spooned up some of history's first iced desserts. Cold was the ultimate luxury. The more of it you could afford, the more you showed off. In China, even earlier, 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, people were cutting ice from frozen rivers each winter and storing it in deep ice cellars for the summer. Ancient records describe officials whose entire job was managing the royal ice supply. They even crafted a double-walled bronze vessel, the Bingjian, to chill wine. And one survives from a tomb sealed around 433 BC, and the most baffling method of all appeared in northern India. On cold, clear winter nights, workers poured water into shallow, unglazed clay trays, resting on beds of straw in shallow pits, radiating heat to the open sky and evaporating through the porous clay. Delicate sheets of ice would form by dawn, even when the air never reached freezing. British officials in the 1700s were stunned. One of them, Robert Barker, wrote it all up for London's Royal Society in 1775. It seemed to defy the laws of nature. It was simply physics, brilliantly exploited. Across medieval Europe, nobles built ice houses, deep insulated pits and brick chambers, often beside a lake. Each winter they harvested ice from frozen ponds, packed it tight, and the heavy insulation kept it frozen straight through the summer to cool food, chill wine, and craft desserts. Natural caves and mountain ice did the same job, but notice the pattern across all of it. For thousands of years, cold belonged to emperors, nobles, and kings. Ordinary people got salt, smoke, and drying. And then one stubborn American had an idea so ridiculous that people genuinely thought he'd lost his mind. In 1806, a young Bostonian named Frederick Tudor decided he was going to cut ice out of frozen New England ponds and ship it to the tropics. Everyone laughed. His first shipment sailed to the Caribbean island of Martinique, where people had never seen ice and had no idea what to do with it. Much of it melted. He lost money. He even ended up in debt. But Tudor was relentless. He learned to insulate the ice with sawdust, a free waste product from lumber mills. He backed a horse-drawn ice plow that could carve out blocks at incredible speed. And he taught people, city by city, to crave a cold drink they never knew they wanted. By 1833, his ship the Tuscany carried 180 tons of ice, 16,000 miles, from Boston all the way to Calcutta, India, on a voyage that took 4 months. Astonishingly, about 100 tons arrived still frozen. The man they called the Ice King had built a global empire out of selling frozen ponds to the world. For the first time in history, cold wasn't just for royalty, but shipping frozen water halfway around the planet was, frankly, insane. Somewhere, someone was bound to ask the obvious question. What if you didn't have to harvest cold at all? What if you could just make it? The first clue came in 1755, when a Scottish physician named William Cullen evaporated a liquid in a vacuum and produced a tiny sliver of ice. The first time a human being ever created cold out of thin air. It was a curiosity, nothing useful. Yet. Then the breakthroughs came in a chain. In 1834, the American engineer Jacob Perkins patented the first vapor compression system, the exact principle humming inside your fridge today. a special fluid that soaks up heat as it evaporates, then dumps that heat back out as it's squeezed and turned back to liquid over and over. In Florida, a doctor named John Gorey built an ice machine, patented in 1851, to cool the rooms of patients dying from malaria and yellow fever. Trying to save lives, he had accidentally built a machine that conjured ice from warm air. Ferdinand Carré added ammonia-powered refrigeration in 1859, and in 1876, Germany's Karl von Linde finally made the technology reliable and industrial. Suddenly, breweries, meat packers, and cargo ships could stay cold anywhere on Earth. No pond required, no winter required. Humanity had finally taken cold away from nature and put it in a machine. The first home refrigerators arrived between about 1913 and 1918, from names like Kelvinator and Frigidaire. In 1927, General Electric's Monitor Top became the first that families actually bought in large numbers. But there was a deadly catch. The early cooling gases were toxic or flammable. A single leak in the night could kill an entire family. So in 1928, a team of chemists led by Thomas Migley created a new gas, Freon, that was non-toxic and non-flammable. It made the refrigerator safe for every kitchen on Earth. Decades later, we discover Freon was quietly harming the ozone layer, and we'd replace it. But that's a story for another video. And that humble humming box changed civilization. Food stopped spoiling, so far less was wasted, and far more people were fed. Fresh milk, meat, and vegetables could now travel across whole countries, which meant cities could grow far from the farms that fed them. Diets became richer and healthier. Deadly food poisoning collapsed. The refrigerator didn't just cool your food. It reshaped what humanity eats, where we live, and how long we survive. So the next time you pull open your fridge and feel that little breath of cold air roll over your hand, stop for 1 second and remember what you're really looking at. That machine is not the beginning of the story. It's the ending. The refrigerator wasn't humanity's first great invention for saving food. It was the final chapter of a story tens of thousands of years long. A story written in drying racks and wood smoke, in salt and fermentation, in clay pots sweating in the sun, in Persian domes that pulled ice out of the desert sky, in ships hauling frozen ponds across entire oceans. Every cold thing you have ever eaten exists because thousands of generations refused to let the invisible enemy win. We didn't invent cold. We spent 300,000 years learning how to steal it, one clever idea at a time. And that quiet box humming in your kitchen, it isn't just a machine, it's a monument.